They said, "It's just a few signatures, Mom. Nothing serious." And I believed them. Because that's what mothers do, we trust the voices we raised, even when they start to sound like strangers. But that paper, those few innocent lines of ink, they didn't just take my house, they took my peace, my name, and my home filled with 50 years of love. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with noise. It comes with a pen. I still remember the day clearly. The smell of rain, the sound of my son's voice, the way my daughter smiled at me like everything was normal. They sat me down with tea and biscuits, the kind of comfort that hides an agenda. They said it was a routine process, just to make things easier. And when I asked, for who, they looked away. I should be known then. The eyes tell the truth long before the mouth dares to. That house wasn't just bricks and wood, it was my story. The place where I first kissed my husband, where I rocked my children to sleep, where every wall whispered memories. Every photo on the shelf was a chapter of a life I built with love, not money, but in one careless moment. I signed away every memory to the people I loved most. Trust is beautiful until it becomes a weapon. Days later, I came home from the market and found a man painting over my door number. He said, "Ma'am, this property is under new ownership." I laughed at first. I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw my children standing behind him, eyes down, guilt heavy. My heart didn't break that day. It shattered quietly, piece by piece. Nothing hurts more than realizing the knife in your back has your child's fingerprints on it. I wasn't angry, not at first. I was lost. I sat on the porch until the sun went down, holding the teacup I'd been drinking from just hours ago. It was still warm, but inside me, everything had gone cold. They said it was for my future. But what kind of future begins with betrayal? Sometimes, the people who promise to protect you are the ones who sell your safety first. The days that followed were a blur of boxes and silence. I packed my life into cardboard, one memory at a time. Neighbors whispered, but nobody asked. Because no one wants to face the truth that love can turn cruel. I walked out of that house without a fight. Because sometimes, the quietest exit leaves the loudest scar. You don't always lose by leaving. Sometimes, you win by not begging to stay. I moved into a small room at the edge of town. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, but at least it was mine. No contracts, no signatures, no smiles hiding knives, just peace. The kind I had to rebuild from ashes every night. I lit a candle and whispered a prayer. Not for them, but for myself. When everything is gone, dignity becomes your only shelter. It had been months since I'd seen his face. The boy I once fed with trembling hands. The boy whose fevered forehead I kissed through sleepless nights. The same boy who took the roof from over my head without a second thought. I thought time would make it easier. It didn't. Single quotes T. If anything, time only made the silence louder. Every creak of the floor in my little, rented room reminded me of footsteps that no longer came home. I told myself I wouldn't cry if I saw him again, but mothers make promises they never keep even to themselves. It was a Sunday afternoon. When he finally came, I heard the knock before I saw the shadow. Under the door, slow, hesitant, familiar. For a moment, I thought my heart had imagined it. Then I heard his voice, deeper now, heavier. "Mom, it's me." The sound of that word mom, it was a wound reopening. I wanted to run to the door. I wanted to throw it open. To forgive, to forget. But forgiveness doesn't come as easily when your love has already been sold. I walked to the door slowly, as if each step had to fight against every memory that begged me to turn back. When I opened it, there he was, my son. Not the boy I remembered, but a man burdened by choices too heavy for his soul. His suit was pressed, his shoes polished, but his eyes were tired. That's the thing about guilt. It ages you faster than time ever could. He didn't look me in the eye at first. He stood there on the threshold, like a stranger, unsure if he was welcome. I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside, and he entered the room that once belonged to my dignity, now filled with secondhand furniture and silence. He looked around, scanning the peeling paint, the flickering bulb, the worn-out rug. He wanted to speak, but words seemed to choke him before they reached his lips. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, you shouldn't be living like this." I smiled, a small, tired smile. The kind that doesn't reach your eyes, the kind that hides more stories than it tells. "I'm living," I said softly. "That's more than I can say for some people who have everything." He flinched, as if the words had touched the part of him still capable of feeling. Then he said the line that I still hear in my dreams, "Mom, you wouldn't understand." For a moment, the room froze, the clock ticked, the air thinned, and I felt something inside me twist, not with anger, but with disbelief. He was right. I wouldn't understand, because how could I ever understand how greed grows so big that it swallows love whole? How could I understand selling your own mother's home and sleeping peacefully that same night? I looked at him carefully, trying to see the boy I once knew hiding behind the man he had become. But the boy was gone. In his place stood someone who had traded his soul for success, his kindness for comfort, his heart for hollow things that glitter but don't glow. I wouldn't understand, I repeated, my voice trembling, not from weakness, but from the weight of truth. I understood hunger before you were born. I understood sacrifice when I fed you and went to bed hungry. I understood pain when I buried your father and smiled so you wouldn't see me cry. Don't tell me I wouldn't understand. He dropped his gaze, his shoulders sinking under invisible guilt. Mom, I didn't mean it like that, he whispered. But there's no way to unmean words once they're spoken, especially the kind that pierce straight through a mother's heart. I walked past him and opened the window. Outside, children were laughing in the street, chasing a red ball that rolled into the sunlight. I watched them for a long moment and said quietly, when you were their age, you once told me you'd buy me a big house one day, one with a garden full of roses. He didn't respond. I turned to face him. Do you remember that? He nodded slowly. Well, I said softly, you did give me a house once. It just wasn't mine to live in. He closed his eyes, as if the truth burned. I could see the conflict in his face, pride fighting with remorse, greed losing to love, if only for a second. But even then, he didn't say sorry. I didn't need him to. Apologies don't fix what greed destroys. I poured him tea, not out of affection, but out of habit, because no matter how much a heart breaks, manners remain. He held the cup in both hands, trembling slightly, and for the first time in years, he looked small again, like the little boy who used to crawl into my lap after scraping his knee. But this time, I couldn't comfort him, because the wounds he carried now were the ones he had given to me. We sat in silence. Only the sound of the clock filled the room, steady, indifferent, counting seconds we could never get back. He said he'd made mistakes, that he wanted to fix things. But some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to be remembered, so they never happen again. I told him, you can't rebuild something you destroyed for profit. You can only rebuild yourself if you're brave enough to start with the truth. His eyes filled with tears he didn't let fall. He stood up slowly and said, I just wanted to make life easier for everyone, Mom. I smiled again, not in forgiveness, but in understanding. You made life easier, I said, for everyone except the one who gave it to you. He turned toward the door, but before he left, I added, you say I wouldn't understand. Maybe you're right, because I still believe family means more than money, and maybe that's something you'll never understand. After he left, I sat alone again, but it felt different this time. There was no bitterness, only acceptance. Sometimes peace doesn't come from getting justice, it comes from realizing you don't need to be understood to know your worth. I looked around my small room, the thin curtains, the old table, the candle flickering on the sill, and I smiled, because this wasn't failure. This was freedom. They had taken everything that could be written on paper, but not the things written on my soul. My dignity, my strength, my ability to start again. I picked up the pen lying on the table, the same tool that had once stolen my home. But this time, I used it differently. I started writing my story, every tear, every silence, every betrayal, so that no other mother would have to live it in silence. And as I wrote the final line, I realized something I wish I had known earlier. You can lose everything you own and still have everything that matters, because what they took was just walls, papers, and possessions. What they couldn't touch was my pride, my patience, my peace. You can't teach empathy to someone who profits from your pain, but you can teach yourself to rise from what they tried to destroy. That night, I looked at the empty walls around me and realized something powerful. They took my house, but they couldn't take my heart. Because what is a house, really? Just bricks and paint and rooms that echo with laughter until that laughter fades. But a home lives in the memories that no paper can erase. I touched the cold wall, tracing where my family photos once hung. The paint felt rough, chipped, tired like me, but beneath it, I felt something else, resilience. I remembered the smell of morning tea, the sound of rain on the old roof, the way my husband's voice used to fill every corner with warmth.